We got this very strong sense that we're not living up to our full potential in our cooperation. It's all about interaction and cooperation, or failure of cooperation between humans, how far we get with environmental goals. Relationships that bring in a lot of blame and judgment and make us feel insecure actually increase the likelihood of having inflammation in our body. And then seeing that in private relationships, but also in the work context. So even like physical temperature, body temperature will be warmer when you had like a good social interaction where you felt safe and seen. This needs a lot more attention. From the biology, like, okay, the person with more power has the resources, so they don't have to care about the other person. So it's very, very important when we are in powerful positions, for example, in a company, that we consciously practice empathy with the people that are in the official hierarchy, like a subordinate. Blaming is a process that is rewarding for our brains. It can feel quite satisfying to blame, and it also has characteristics that are similar to addiction. And it can feel like the total truth, and we cannot access our rational thinking. So do we go and punch somebody in the face, or do we find a space for self-compassion or somebody else giving us compassion? But this is like skills we have to train, because we didn't learn this at school, most of us. And just like noticing, like, okay, we're all humans and we all have these basic feelings. And
Clara, thank you so much for being here. You are a resilience trainer that uses neuroscience, our understanding of our own psychology, in a sense, to address better the pressing issues that we face, such as climate change, the climate crisis we're living, polarization. So I'm really excited to be talking with you, because in Handprints, both the project and the podcast, what we really try to do is to figure out what we can do to expand our handprint, or the positive impact that we have upon the world. And sometimes in my mind that is a bit self-improvement, but with a greater social purpose. So I'm extremely excited to have this conversation with you. So maybe first of all, could you tell us a bit about who you are? Why did you end up working with mental resilience, and especially within the area of sustainability?
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much, first of all, for having me. I'm really excited. A little bit nervous, but in a good way, and very excited to have this conversation. And so my background is actually in environmental studies and politics, so that's what I studied in the bachelor and in the master. And like during this learning about environmental problems on a global level, on different local levels, really realizing it's all about interaction and cooperation, or failure of cooperation between humans, how far we get with environmental goals. And then I did a few internships and in an NGO, in a governmental organization, in a political party, and just like observing the communication patterns. And I really got this very strong sense that we're not living up to our full potential in our cooperation. So I noticed a lot of emotional burden in people, and a lot of unspoken things that built up over time, and then the kind of sometimes rivalry about positions or resources, sometimes back-talking because somebody got frustrated about something but doesn't bring it honestly. So, and this all like kind of felt like this emotional burden in the background that holds back our potential to even think or access our full brain capacities. So that's how I got very interested into new ways of accessing teamwork. And then I did a few trainings which just expanded my view. And then from that on I just felt like, oh, this is so important to bring these kind of new ways of teamworking into environmental fields. That's where my passion started, and then I just learned more and more, and experimenting now with workshops and offering these services.
I think as humans we're very attracted to the clear answers to when we can do something and we see the results immediately. It's very measurable in a sense, and when we talk about social impact, there's a whole movement called effective altruism, which evaluates like if you donate money, how can you do this in the most efficient manner? Between $3,000 and $5,000 saves a life, and all of these things. Or if you're passionate about animal rights, you can become a vegan and reduce the suffering of so and so many animals. And I feel that often this part that you're talking about now, the communication, how we collaborate, it's often not so prioritized because it's more indirect in a sense. But in my opinion, that's often where most of the potential lays, because it's the way that you interact with people, that you handle your relationships, that you walk around in the world. That is the way that you can inspire people, open people's eyes, and together create this collaboration for these very specific measurable results. But that's how you make this impact scalable or exponential in a sense, because that's how you get people on board on your project.
I very much agree, and just like learning more and more about the neuroscience of our communication and relationships, I got really astonished about how much impact it has, because I think often it has like this image of like, oh, this is like the soft topic, this is just for like these I don't know, soft people who have like the time and privilege to like kind of do like me, oh, I need this and I need that, but it's not like the hardcore stuff that we need to do effective change. But like learning about interpersonal neuroscience just really opened my eyes in another way. So maybe I can share a few insights from that.
It would be brilliant, yeah.
There's a social baseline theory, and it says like that actually our bodies are designed in a way that we only access our baselines of our like physiological functions, like that what we need to be healthy when we are in safe social settings. So it's really built into our biology, this expectations that we are in safe social relationships. So this idea of individualism, that it would be totally normal to just like live a solo life and just like be most of the time by ourselves and with our computer, just doesn't let us access our physical energy and health. So I think this is like one thing that is very underestimated. And then things like around inflammation, for example, that like relationships that bring in a lot of blame and judgment and make us feel insecure actually like increase the likelihood of having inflammation in our body, which of course like has big health implications. So I think this interlinkage of relationships and physical health, and of course physical health is the basis for productivity and work, using our brains in a good way. I think this needs a lot more attention, and then seeing that in private relationships but also in the work context.
Super interesting. I've often heard, I find longevity, a healthy lifestyle, something that's really interesting, and again, a huge potential that we can unlock. And people say time and again that good relationships makes you live longer. And for me, it makes sense in a sense, but I always wanted to know, yes, but why? What's the underlying, like one level down? And this inflammation is very interesting.
Yeah, it's like the sense like when we are in a safe group that we know that also resources come from other places, and if we don't have that, we have to like generate all the resources for ourselves. So even like physical temperature, body temperature will be warmer when you had like a good social interaction where you felt safe and seen. So it really impacts like all levels, and blood pressure and oxygen levels in the blood. So it's very, very basic. Yeah. And
this is both something this knowledge we can apply in order to achieve the most ourselves, but then apart from our relationship with ourselves, any other relationship is with other people, which means that if we do things to improve our own relationships, that has the inevitable impact or the handprint of also having hopefully a similar effect on other people as well.
Totally, and I guess it's like the ripple effect. When one person is more recharged socially, then they can give it more to others as well. Like
one of the main pillars that we tackle in handprints when looking at social impact is, or the first pillar actually, is our own happiness, because of the belief that the happier we are ourselves, the more well that we feel, the more energized, that this is without any conscious effort from us, it is going to seep into our relationships in the world. And then on top of that, you can add like more conscious decisions of maybe smiling to a stranger, or trying to be more conscious about the compliments that you give, not just think them, but actually speak them.
Yeah.
But just the fact in itself of being more energized, more content is something that already has an impact.
Yeah. And actually the most impact on happiness is, as I read recently in a study, is like the aspect of mutuality, like how much we experience ourselves as mutual in our relationships. So it's a very this inner sense of how easy do I share my inner thoughts and feelings with the other person. It could be like a partner, but it could also be like friends or colleagues, or maybe colleagues with a little bit more on the professional level, but in general, like feeling mutual in a sense, like how easy do I share, how easy does the other person share and I receive it and welcome it, and also how much am I generally interested in the growth of the other person. And one interesting aspect about power is actually like that when we when our power increases, it's more likely that we tap out of this mutuality. So it's the process of mirroring in our brain gets more difficult to access, like that we actually read the other person's emotion well, that we mimic the other person. Like usually it's very quickly that we kind of tune in and that we pick up some of the things or wording or gestures, but with more power, in a sense, it's these processes become more unlikely for our brain. So it's very, very important when we are in powerful positions, for example, in a company, that we maybe know about this, to be conscious of it, and to consciously practice empathy with the people that are in the official hierarchy, like subordinate. And that could also lead to a bigger mutuality and a bigger happiness for those people in the work relationship. And then again, having more mutuality and the more experience of safety in the relationship also increases, like that we can access our prefrontal cortex with our conscious thinking, with our creative thoughts, and getting out of fear. Because when we are more scared in a relationship of judgment and blame, we will be more in our fight and flight mode. We will be not able to access our conscious thinking. So relationships are so the basis. And then also when you're working in sustainability, of course, you need creativity to have new solutions. We cannot solve the problems with the old thinking. We need the creativity. So psychological safety in the workspaces is very, very fundamental.
And within any kind of relationships, romantic, professional, within the family, you're saying that as the person who has more power, if there is a power difference, you have more of an impact on the other. You have more, what you do has more of an impact making the other happy or unhappy than vice versa. Is that a bit how that your actions impact the other more than that person impacts you?
You mean like what is the definition of power?
No, just, is this kind of the result, or is this one of the outcomes?
I think if you see like power as a way, like you have more ability to control resources that both of you need, or you could restrict the other person from fulfilling their needs. This kind of power has this effect on our brains that it's easy to not empathize with the other person anymore. And then, of course, if you are in that mode, you could easily step over the boundaries of that person, or not see their needs, not hear their needs. So there was like this very interesting experiment with where people were supposed to write the letter E on their forehead, and then I mean, you could just, for people listening, just like imagining like doing that for yourself, like with a adding that you can wash away after, just writing the E on your forehead, and then in the experiment, the people before would write a short essay, a short experience about either an experience where they felt powerful and control over others, or where they felt like overpowered by others. And then it came out in this experiment that people who were connecting to the experiment where to the experience where they had power over others, they would more often write the E in their from their own perspective. So they, like, in their inner eye, they could read it, but people from the other side would see it in the wrong way. But if they were more connected to an experience where they felt others having power over them, they would write it more in the way that others could read it from the right way. So what does that mean? I think it's very eye-opening in the way that when we have more power, we have a tendency to get more self-referential. So we experience our world as like the world, and others sometimes don't really exist for us, or only as a function to serve our goals, or as enemies, but not as actual like living beings that we need to consider. Yeah, I think sometimes when I'm like, okay, I want to feel more empathic now, I'm just like imagining to writing the E in that way that the other person could read it, like just to getting into that mindset, how is the other person perceiving it there. Yeah.
I'm going to, when you said the example with E, I tried just to illustrate to write an E on myself. I'm going to go back in the video and see what direction I wrote it, do an analysis of myself, and
not to judge it also, because we will be usually, many people will be in both situations at some points. Probably not everybody, but it can really shift from situation to situation, because these people were also just primed. They were not in an actually more powerful position, but they were primed with their own former experiences. And maybe to add, like when you are in a more powerful position, it's not even conscious thought and intention that can bring you back to accessing the mirroring process. But the only thing that works is like remembering a situation where you also felt powerless, or where others had power over you. Then you come back to accessing the mirroring process, and you can feel empathy with the other persons again. Yeah.
And where does privilege fit into this?
Yeah, very much. Thank you for the question. Very, very much. Because, of course, with each privilege, it gives us power. In the different areas of life, and so that means that when we are in a more powerful position than our counter person, that we might be so self-referential that we don't really see them, or we don't really like attend to their needs. But people in the less powerful position with less privilege, they will use more capacity of their brain to read the other person, to read their needs and feelings, to read their cues. So, like from an evolutionary perspective, like it sounds very hard, but it makes sense. Like from the biology, like okay, the person with more power has the resources, so they don't have to care about the other person. But the person with not having the access to resources and the control, they have to like see like how what is happening with the other person and stuff. So it's very, but I mean also, this is like some research findings. I think we also have to always keep reflecting and not making people biological machines, and I think that's very important. But I find these findings from experiments and brain scans very, very interesting, because I think then we can be more aware of our own brain patterns and notice them in daily life and be like, oh, now I was just circling around myself. I did not really see this person. Okay, it's a normal process, but I know that I don't have to be a victim of that process. I can connect to my own vulnerability and then feel more connected with the other person as well. Yeah, and circling back what we said before, like just also this huge impact of privilege that we don't consciously are aware of, that we don't try to transform, how much impact that has on a person with less privilege when they are, from a nervous system perspective, not really considered another being, an encounter, but more like more a function, or not even being seen really, because then there will be less mutuality and less energy. So this threat of being excluded, of not being heard, maybe being misread or assigned some characteristics or something. This is such a huge threat on people's nervous system. Like it's impacting health, and there's also a lot of research about inflammation levels and health impacts of racism, for example. Huge impact on the immune system. Yeah, and I think that's often not regarded in the discussion or from a privileged perspective. That we don't notice it, of course, from the privileged perspective. Like I don't feel anything. Like it cannot be that big of a problem, but it's part of the problem that we don't feel it, or in the privileged person, one doesn't feel it, and yeah. And then talking about the neurobiology, again, when our brains, when we are made aware of differences between us and someone else, like, oh, this person belongs to a different group, also our empathy is restricted. So stories from politicians about people who migrate to the country, that they are different, or these groups of people, they have this characteristics. This all is something that really impedes our empathy processes in the brain. So it's made harder to feel, oh, we're actually the same, like, okay, also human, yeah, arms, legs, eyes, or whatever, but we are basically the same. But this focus on the differences, on group characteristics, is such a tool of people who want to use it to their benefit to split societies, and then I think learning about this is crucial, because otherwise we don't feel empathic, and it's like, oh, okay, maybe that person is right. And then coming back to the blame that you were mentioning earlier, that blaming is a process that is rewarding for our brains, and it like generates a sort of emotional relief. So it can feel quite satisfying to blame, because then we don't have the responsibility ourselves, and it can feel very true, even though in a rational way it's like most of the time not true. And it also has characteristics that are similar to addiction, so it's very easy to think blame in a repetitive way and just like think it again and again. Like maybe you know this from a private setting, like sometimes I can catch myself with specific topics and like kind of going back to that situation for myself or another person, and just like the blame comes up and again. But also on the collective level, like this, it can be easy to stick with that and feel really true. So not trusting our blame and using our conscious thought is very, very important.
But that could explain a lot of things. The fact that we get less, actually on a neurological level, gets less empathic to individuals who are different. Yeah. And this is, I imagine, this is across any kind of organization that we can do, any kind of division that we can create in terms of appearance or behavior or nationality or political views or species as well. I think there's I've been reading a few books of a psychologist, Melanie Joy, who writes about relationships. And one thing that she writes a lot about is exactly this, and this how we can completely justify the domination of another group, both in the past in terms of gender differences, but also apartheid, slavery, and today large-scale animal abuse through animal culture. And she talks about 3 N's, how it's normal. Everyone does it, but it's normal. Women don't have the right to vote in Sweden or Denmark and in Norway. Then why would we change that? That's the way it is. That it's natural. This is like what you talked about, the biological explanations. No, but women are less assertive, or that there is some sort of natural explanation for this, and that it's necessary. Like, this would destabilize society. But then what you're saying is that the fact that we actually have less empathy with participants of a different group, that's maybe something that comes in like in addition to these three strategies to maintain an abusive system.
That it's very it's kind of easy, like it often doesn't hurt the person in the privilege, not feeling the pain of that. Well, there's no equity. Okay, it feels quite comfortable, and there's also research about like that with our privileges, or a person with specific privileges feels like they deserve them. They deserve them because of who they are. Like it's and I have to admit that I can recognize this kind of a felt sense, which is like so weird and also embarrassing to say, but like this this kind of course I have this because I'm this is who I am, but not understanding like, oh, I was lucky because I was born in this family in this country to that time, and I'm so capable in these areas because I got so many resources and so much love and care or money, and this is, I think, it's really like increasing self-righteousness also about that, and like also maybe the unwillingness to see the inequity in that, and that maybe some power could be shared or distributed in a different way.
It makes it very difficult to show compassion with others, because if I am the way, if I deserve everything that I have, then someone less fortunate might always also within the same logic deserve that, or not have done the things right. It's like their fault
in a way, or we could go in this direction.
You were talking a bit about the brain, how the brain looks, the left hemisphere, the right hemisphere, and what that has to do with the way we are socially. Could you tell a bit more about that?
Yeah, I would love to. So we have 2 brain hemispheres, and they're actually structured in a different way a bit. So the left hemisphere, it's more like the logical thinking, analytical thinking, but also our kind of to-do mode when we are in this, like, okay, I have to get things done, this happens more with the dominance of the left brain. And in the right brain, we have more access to empathy, to our body sensations, and to most of the emotions. And actually the goal would be to use them both in a very integrated way, that they work together in the best way. But in our societies, most of the time our left brain hemisphere is dominant. And this is a tricky thing, like linking back to what we talked about in the beginning, how important it is for us to experience mutuality in relationships, to have a lot of energy and feel happy. For this, we need the integration of the left and the right hemisphere, because when we are in a dominance of the left hemisphere, when you have new information will be processed through the process of blame. So blame is like a very default mode to process new information for the left hemisphere. But like we said earlier, the harmful impact of blame on others and like creating an insecure social atmosphere, it's very important to be aware of the blame maker and not let it run the show.
And why is it that in society we use the left one more? Is this something that has been developing over time? Is this fixed or?
A very good question. I don't know the starting point, but there's a book by Ian McGilchrist, like where he goes back in human history and like kind of analyzing the role of the hemispheres in the big movements, because in the left hemisphere it's also very easy to see other people as functions, like to my own benefit, and yeah, because the empathy needs the involvement of the right hemisphere. So with the left hemisphere we go more into rigid thinking, we go more into black and white truths. We are more in a mode of getting things for ourselves rather than being in service, because we don't feel ourselves really connected. We feel ourselves more as, okay, maybe in the to-do mode, getting things done, driving forward. We're more inclined to want to have control. But when we bring our right hemisphere more in, we can access more a perspective of holistic, like, oh, this is a holistic world, it's complex. We're more able to allow complexity and relationability. So, oh, this is a complex world and I'm in relation to the other person, to you, to the space, to nature. But we cannot access that in the left hemisphere because we will always want to have like clear-cut truth. And also with the dominance of the left hemisphere, we will believe more that we will overestimate our own knowledge and like think, okay, we have the truth and we don't have to be really curious about other people's truth or something. We feel very like easily self-righteous, like in this kind of mindset. So I mean, hearing that, you can probably already sense like, oh, this is not such a nice environment to work in, to have in the family and stuff. But it's very present. So with the resonance work with Sarah Payton, we are learning to bringing these together. And yeah, we do that through different exercises. So knowing that the right hemisphere comes online with naming body sensations. So this is a big part, often really going into observation, noticing like, where is tension, where is relaxation? Okay, I notice maybe my belly is a bit tight, but I feel like warmth in my upper body, noticing some tension here or something already like brings the right hemisphere, makes it more active. And then also, for example, poetry, like the visual metaphors, something that is more in this way of the creative side. Yeah, it can involve more the right hemisphere. So, for example, when I feel very upset about something, I could, for example, find a metaphor for my feeling state. So I could say, oh, this felt like I'm the small mouse and there's like a huge elephant and it's like about to step on me. And it feels really like that. And then I noticed like a small relief. Yes. And this also links to the relationship of our prefrontal cortex and our amygdala, if I should speak a bit more about that.
I was just before wondering, you said that naming sensations in the body, poetry, maybe other forms of art as well, I don't know, are ways of awakening or giving work to the right part, the right hemisphere. So are these actions that can, and then this inevitably causes ripple effects of us using the right hemisphere more in other aspects of life, when we relate to people, when we make decisions, or are there other things, other measures we can do as individuals and as a society to integrate these more?
Yeah, very good question. I think there's probably a bunch of ways, and probably I only know a few, and I'm sure other people could share also more on that. I mean, just like they also start working well together when we do physical activities, like biking or things where we use both body sides, because our left brain side is like controlling the motor functions of the right body parts, and the other way around. So just like going for a walk will already bring some integration. But the important thing is how we react when we are emotionally activated. So maybe some have already heard of the amygdala, like a small part of the brain of the limbic system that will detect for danger and really like does a lot of things, but sending signal when there's alarm or sending alarm when there's danger, and a lot of our trauma is also stored there. So when we feel like, when you say like, oh, I'm emotionally triggered or something, this amygdala is super active, and then it depends on how do we deal with this activated amygdala. So do we go and punch somebody in the face, or do we like find a space for self-compassion or somebody else giving us compassion? And so we can really train our conscious thinking, our prefrontal cortex, which is like here and behind the forehead, to turn to our amygdala. And this is like, as a symbol, you can imagine like you're like an adult turning to a child, because the child is like, what's going on? I'm scared. And then the adult turning like, okay, like really tuning in, what's alive for this part. So we can grow these neurons even to old age, that bring this emotional regulation from our conscious part to our amygdala, so that more and more the energy and the information flow goes in this direction with our own adult part. Basically, we take care of our upset child, and not the other way around, that the amygdala like easily said, like is flooding our prefrontal cortex with energy and information, because then this feels like the ultimate truth. Oh, I'm threatened. This is not safe. I have to kill someone. And then it can feel like the total truth, and we cannot access our rational thinking. Like, hey, what are my values? Like, what makes actual sense for long term? Yeah, I don't want to make fun of this, but just like the dramatic experience of how it can feel when our amygdala is running our thought experience, and this can feel like the total truth then. So it's very, very supportive, and I think there should be a lot more education about emotional regulation, that even children at school can learn this, why they feel in a certain way sometimes and what they can do about it. And then linking back to the hemispheres, it's the most effective for emotional regulation when we turn to our amygdala with both the hemispheres. Because if we just use the left hemisphere, like if we notice there's emotional discomfort, but we don't integrate both hemispheres, we just let the left hemisphere run, then it will just like go into blame. Oh, I don't feel comfortable. Oh, this person, blah blah blah, they did this and that, or like oh my god, I'm so bad, like blaming myself. But it does not really regulate. It does not really calm, or improve our relationships, of course. And so if we bring in some of the more visual, noticing our body sensations, but also naming feelings and needs in a very precise way, and expressing them in words or writing them to ourselves, can bring like this more integrated regulation of the amygdala. Yeah, because the linguistic system is also in the left hemisphere. So when we notice body sensations and express them with words, it's also strengthening that integration. Yeah.
And you got the invitation for this interview quite late, just 2 days ago, and then could you do it on Saturday? Yes, let's go. And then you got the information that it would be with cameras yesterday evening, I think. A lot of pressures, or a lot of you said that you needed to mentally prepare, and then you said today that now you're mentally prepared. So I was a bit curious, hearing from a resilience coach, what did that time between you found out about the interview, the cameras, everything that sounds scary and very serious, until being mentally prepared? What would be the steps that you were taking?
That's a very sweet question. Yeah, no, I think in this instant it was not such a big process, because there was also a lot of things going on. So I think it just helped me to take a moment last night to like kind of think through, and then I felt like, okay, I'm a bit collected in my thoughts, and then I already noticed calmness, so I didn't have to do like an emotional regulation exercise with that. But sometimes, I mean, what I do is, it can be journaling. So I would like take one situation where I feel like insecure, upset, whatever the feeling may be, and I'm like taking a moment. It could just be 10 minutes or 5 minutes, and just quickly noticing, okay, how is my body doing? Do I notice 3 things? Maybe my calves are a little bit tense, maybe my jaw is tense, or I feel my shoulders are very tight. And then I write that down, and then I go, okay, what are specific feelings? Okay, oh, there's anxious, some anger, and some grief. It could be that complex, like 3 very big feelings. So I write it down, and then I go to needs. What needs are underneath there? Oh, safety, need for compassion, need to be seen, for example. And I write it down, and that already brings like a calm, like my system, my amygdala feels like, oh, seen, okay, there's somebody taking care of that. And of course, then I could go into strategy, how do I get these needs fulfilled? But already naming that can help. And then I also have like practice partners where we just like quite regularly have calls where we give each other this kind of attention. So it can be self-regulation or co-regulation, as we call it. So
which are these 2?
Yeah, so the self-regulation is when I do it with myself, with journaling, or just talking to myself. I could say like, oh, Clara, wow, I see your belly so tight, like, are you really scared? La 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 la. Or if we do it together and you share an experience, and then I can give you this kind of attention, like kind of like checking in, how is your body doing? And wow, do you need really acknowledgement of fear? And then going and touching on the needs, and it's very, very sweet process, I think, because it's very, very connecting, and just like noticing like, okay, we're all humans and we all have these basic feelings, and not taking myself out of that relation, like because it can also be very, very helpful to share body sensations that I experience when I listen to something you share. best with consent. But if you share something very, very exciting that you're very, very happy about, and I say like, wow, that makes me feel so warm, like I feel like the warmth in my belly expand, like how does it make you feel? Like what's happening for you? And then just that our nervous system learn like, oh, there's somebody else, like I'm actually in a relationship, I'm seen, what I say has an impact on another person. And the reason why this is so important is like that as babies, we are dependent that our expression has an impact on the nervous system of our parents, that they actually notice us and that they will give us food and love and shelter and all these things. So this knowing that what we share actually does something in the body of somebody else is a very, very basic process that can make us feel more safe. And it is also sometimes nice to ask for consent before we do that, because it's so unusual. So if you do it like out of the blue, it can be a bit maybe overwhelming, but checking in, hey, is it okay to share body sensations, like I feel? Or if something very horrible happens and somebody is like, oh, like when you say that, it's like everything is cramping in my belly, just like it's like acknowledgement of what's real for us, because I think there's so much this culture of positive thinking and having to be happy and showing that we have our stuff together and stuff, but everybody has these basic emotions, and when we actually experience this situations of, oh, somebody's resonating with us, it's okay to feel this, and the person is just there, it's the person staying there, and I can express it, and then it's a very good way to release, like open the pressure cooker a bit, so there's some tension can release, and then we can let go more easily of this emotion. A lot more healthy than suppressing the emotion and thinking we have to show everything is fine. But this is like skills we have to train, because we didn't learn this at school, most of us. So this is something that is, taking some practice, but then it's so rewarding. Yeah, and really leading us to this sense of mutuality in our relationships. And very, very nourishing.
This is something that I have started doing recently, and it's been very important, but before, through the majority of my life, I didn't know I was feeling things, because when you're not listening, when you don't have your antennas out, at least for me, I didn't think they existed. I thought I didn't have any feelings almost a lot of the time, and then it takes some practice to really pick up on them, and to say them out loud to my partner is the first step to actually looking at the needs and seeing that there are needs there. Now let's start thinking at the strategies. But what you're saying, just sharing them, is already lifting a bit of the burden, and kind of creates an intimacy, and it creates this sort of understanding that if I'm being difficult, because that's often the outcome, that I have some internal stresses, some things that are dysregulated within me. People on the outside might see that in more irritability, or so even if I don't notice them myself, it's going to impact other people. But if I'm able to say that I'm feeling somewhat dysregulated, then it opens up for the other person to feel compassion and understanding, instead of irritation with my difficult sides.
Yeah, totally.
I have what I call a happiness list, that is just a list of all the things I do every day in order to feel as good. It's basically my to-do list, but with a very happiness focus. And I focus a lot on the things, like the very practical things to do. However, I think that happiness or well-being is so much more multifaceted than just going for a walk, doing some exercise. It's really understanding yourself, what you are saying, picking up on these small cues. There are so many nuances. So one thing that I'm trying to incorporate more into my happiness list is not just ticking off the things that I am doing, but evaluating the feelings that I'm having. So my question for you is, what are the kind of feelings or sensations that it could be useful to evaluate. Nowadays it's how happy was I today, which is a very broad concept. How stressed did I feel? How energetic did I feel? How focused did I feel? But these are still broad categories, so it would be interesting to hear how would you design the happiness list for kind of picking up on cues that you might be dysregulated.
Interesting. Is it like a as a practice to do in the evening to kind of prime yourself more towards feeling this more?
Yes, getting to know my own spectrum and see, okay, today I felt like this, how can I feel a bit better tomorrow? Yeah.
Interesting, yeah. I feel, thank you for sharing this. Like, I love the, like, taking care of ourselves in this kind of, okay, there's like this time of the day where I check in with myself and kind of have this continuity of observing my well-being. I love that. And yeah, I think it can create a lot of pressure to wanting to feel happy all the time, and I have to say
it does. It's definitely a balance. I have tipped over in that. Oh, I haven't checked off everything. So it's very important to be very cautious. Like any tool, you can hurt yourself with a hammer, but you can't build a house without a hammer. I'm very glad you're bringing that up, actually.
Yeah. So I think I really came to this point of like coming to, in a way, enjoying the whole spectrum of emotions, because it's life and it brings us alive. And I think oftentimes our judgment about the emotions or how things should be, how we should be, how our life path should be, is something that creates a lot of pain. But feeling like the pure emotion, I come to really enjoy moments of grief, for example. When I can be in the grief in this pure way of just feeling that, sharing that with others, it just can feel very right, and we have these emotional circuits in our nervous system. So there is it's like 7 or 8, depending on the perspective, different circuits. One of them is our fear circuit, then is our circuit of rage, with all the facets of that, like anger, frustration, things like that. Then is one for care, things of care. There's one for joy and play. There is one for sexuality and emergence, which is like also kind of like this process of becoming ourselves, and developing ourselves, and the circuit of disgust, which is like acknowledged by some research and not by others, but disgust can be very important for setting boundaries, for feeling like physical disgust, but also morally or socially, and we need this circuit to be running well for being able to set boundaries and feeling our boundaries. So there's it's like this whole spectrum, and when we block out some of these because of our beliefs, then we're kind of like cutting off some of our life energy, because all of these are built there for a purpose, right? So if we have our fear circuit running well, then it's very useful for us to know like when situations are dangerous, where we should watch out, where things could happen. But in early childhood, when we have certain experiences in those feelings that were like threatening to us, or created some trauma, we can build blockages on those circuits. So it could be that I never allow myself to feel angry, because maybe, I don't know, whatever happened was not, I did not want to feel. It could also be a play circuit being blocked when a child was in a very strong play state, and then a disruption happened because there was a like an accident or something, that's like, oh, it's not safe to be in the circuit. And also these circuits can link with each other. So it can be that they light up always together. So that could be, it can be a lot of a variety of the human experience. It could be something that when people go into sexuality, that they always feel grief because something happened that linked these circuits together, or they always have to cry, or they cannot tolerate when other people are in play because it's linking to some of their trauma. So I think it's so rich to access this, the whole facets of the emotions, because they all have their functions, and working on releasing these blocks, so we can feel the most integrated whole way. Yeah.
So in a society where we are often trying to avoid many of these feelings that are considered negative, how do we get to that point that where you were, that you said that you're able to actually be in the grief and enjoy, in a sense, the grief? How did you get to that point? How could I get to that point? And how could we as a society get to that point as well?
I'm really longing for first more education about emotional regulation in schools and in the public, having more awareness, because I think it can help to have like the rationale why this is very helpful, why this is very healthy, and to increase the motivation. And then it's like practice. So it's really these neurons for this part of the brain are very very open to grow. They're very it's possible to grow these neurons, and for that it's practice. So exercises, and I like the training I'm going through with Sarah Payton has been very transformational in this way, and I could imagine there's other people doing similar trainings. I think it's also good for each person finding their own method that really resonates with you, and having this basic process of noticing and being with. So doing journaling practices with body sensations, feelings, needs, naming that, or practicing this compassion with each other. So you could, for example, if you want to strengthen the sense of mutuality with your partner, you could say like, okay, we set aside 20 minutes each day or once a week and we just like come together, sit with each other, and one person gets to share something, and then the other person gets to like feel their own body and ask questions. For example, are you feeling? And then in the feelings that come up for you, like asking as a question. You never assign other people, oh, I know you are feeling this and this. This is very disruptive. But asking it with a specific suggestion of a feeling word. Not asking like how you're feeling, then the other person has to think, and then we go into cognition. But what we just want to be seen and received, and then we get to say like, oh yeah, it's that feeling. Oh no, actually not. It's more this and that. But it doesn't matter if we guessed wrong, because it's more about sensing this kind of attention from the other person that we can relax into, or they're actually generally interested in what is true for us, and we have the space of saying yes and no. And having the time to actually sense and expressing what it is, and then doing that the same with needs. And then you could also offer your partner a metaphor guest, saying like, are you open? It's good to ask for consent. Are you open for a metaphor guest? Then the other person can decide if they want to hear that or not. And then you could say like, wow, when I'm listening to you, I wonder if it feels like you were in this like kind of spinning wheel, and it's like it's not stopping, and you just cannot, like, you can't do anything to stop it, and it doesn't feel anything like this, like asking it, just offering it as like a gift, and the person gets to say like, no, it feels more like I'm on this like long hike and I just don't know where it ends. They can make their own picture of how their state is feeling like. Or they could say, yes, it's the spinning wheel, but it's more, I don't know, I can see the other person spinning it, or like adding some details, what makes it feel more true to them.
And why the metaphors?
Why the metaphor? Because the metaphor brings in our right hemisphere, because that's where the visual, poetic kind of thinking comes in. So then when we express that with our language, with our linguistic center, both of the hemispheres working together to understand what's going on in the amygdala. So it's very, very calming, usually, yeah. And we know that the metaphor lands and is right for us when our body relaxes. So we can really watch out for when our body is really relaxed. And then you could switch around and have the other person share something, and then you're responding. And I think the most important is like this, having the time and space for actually being with what is, and feeling this genuine interest. The other person really wants to know what it feels like for me, and they don't want to just quickly solve my problem by giving me advice. Advice can really increase our stress hormone levels if it's without consent. So if you want to give advice, like, always ask for consent. Otherwise, it's actually a stress factor in your relationship. Yeah, we mean well and just want to like solve it quickly for the other person, but it can really increase the stress. So.
And Clara, if you're given 1 minute to speak about any topic, and that will be broadcasted to every human being on Earth, how would you spend that minute?
Decrease the pressure. Okay.
Maybe the best question for you would be, how would you prepare for that minute, like in terms of resilience, getting regulated? So that could be the follow-up question as well.
I would definitely do resonance practice with a practice partner to get after these sessions. I feel so relaxed and so in tune with myself. That's very beautiful. That's how I would prepare. And what I would say is, take a moment.
Understandable. And you don't have to do the 1 minute pitch.
I don't have to do the 1 minute.
It's more like how.
What would I talk about?
We don't have that much reach on this podcast, unfortunately.
Oh, that's a pity. No, I think I would actually also bring in breath work, because it has a huge impact on our way of thinking. And then, just inspiring to learning about emotional regulation and not taking our thoughts as truth and our feelings as truth, but actually learning this conscious process of the curiosity about our own bodies and the processes of emotions. Yeah.
And if you could leave one challenge for the next guest and for the people who are listening, one challenge that would have a positive impact either on themselves or the world around them, what challenge would that be? Yeah.
Oh, I would challenge to ask a close person, a person in a close relationship, to try out this what I just shared, the practice of being with each other's state of feelings for 20 minutes, and just experiencing what happens and how you feel afterwards.
So if I was to do that at home tonight, I would find someone that I feel close to, and then I would spend 20 minutes. How would I introduce this to the person? You said it's important to get their consent, not just drop it on them. So how would these 20 minutes look like if I'm to do this right away? You could ask them beforehand, hey, do you feel like doing an experiment that could strengthen our relationship, and it has to do with emotion and really like trying to see each other, like being really open, of course. And then when they agree, you could later like sit down, you can set a timer and give like 10 minutes to the first person, and then
yeah, just take some minutes to share, and best maybe what I forgot to say before you start, both take a moment to tune into your own body. Like you can close your eyes and really take some deep breaths, really sense it. How is your body right now? And then opening your eyes to the other person and noticing how your body sensations change with that, and then that you can already share. That's like what Sarah Payton calls like the basic attunement. Like you let the other person change your own body sensations. And then going into sharing, just take a few moments, pick one situation that is not like your biggest trauma in your life, but like one situation that annoyed you a bit or something that is stressing you right now, that is not super big. Like it could be a smaller emotional activation, and then just like letting the other person like do these guesses for you, and just sensing in, what is it actually, and just going from there and seeing to get to the precise naming. And it's very helpful to like practice being precise. It's the most regulating when we name it in a very, it could be very colorful or very very, very precise naming of the feelings, then our amygdala calms the most. Yeah.
So that would have the effects of maybe increasing our proximity, calming me and the other person down, as well as are there any other benefits, as well as the practice maybe of getting to know your body more?
Yeah, it's also decreasing stress levels, and you also get out of a fight and flight mode should you be in that, like accessing more the parasympathetic part of the nervous system, and starting to grow these neurons that help us with emotional regulation. So the more you do that, the more easy it will be, because in the beginning it can feel quite awkward, like to naming that, like it's not very usual. And it can feel even like stupid or ridiculous, like this is not so important and stuff like that, but just like observing what actually happens.
And if you feel a bit uncomfortable doing this, if you don't have anyone that you feel entirely comfortable doing this with, or if you aren't used to talking so much with feelings with your friends,
then I would just suggest starting with journaling. Doing the body sensations, feelings and needs with one specific situation. You could do that every evening or once in a while, just picking one situation in the day that kind of made you dysregulated, and looking what it is. And also it's also very important to accompany your own joy, because our joy circuit is very vulnerable, and for many people it's very difficult to be actually in joy. So also naming the joy, and like very specifically, I'm feeling excitement, I'm feeling glad, I'm feeling grateful. Naming that is also very, very supportive for us to be able to be in that circuit. And
Clara, thank you so much for the conversation. As someone who is starting to figure out to be in touch with my own emotions and my own sensations, but who have definitely figured out the importance of this work, this has given me lots of new tools talking to you. So I'm really excited to continue the process. So thank you so much for the conversation.
Thank you so much as well. It was really a pleasure to dive into that, and thank you for the good questions, and really, bring it together and open the doors.